Over the past few years, we've seen a steep incline in censorship spreading across the gaming industry, particularly in the West, because social justice has taken over and developers are afraid to get cancelled. When games from Japan are released in North America, companies like Sony tell developers they've got to censor content they are deeming inappropriate, or else the games and developers' future titles can be potentially banned from their platform. And unfortunately, a big problem is localization. A lot of localizers aren't simply translating things as accurately to English as possible. They're taking creative liberties and changing things to be more with the times and less offensive. And Skies of Arcadia is a legendary game from 2000, but an older interview recently resurfaced where the translator admitted to completely rewriting dialogue. I have a few things to show off, but before we get into the topic at hand, if you enjoy the content that I create, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Follow me on social media like Twitter or mine so that you can see when my content is posted. And of course, if you do really enjoy the videos and the live streams that I create, please consider becoming a Dark Titan via Patreon for just $1 a month or supporting the channel via YouTube memberships. All of the links are in the description, and of course, I do really appreciate all of the support. So I initially saw this on Sankaku Complex. It says old interview reveals Skies of Arcadia dialogue was completely rewritten. This is extremely worrying to hear. It says an old interview has resurfaced on social media as it involves a translator for a classic title, Skies of Arcadia, admitting they merely did a rough translation of the game before throwing out the rest of the Japanese text and ad-libbing as they saw fit, a pure example of why many hate localizers and demonstrating that the problem has existed for decades. The 2015 interview was with translator Clayton Vorlick, and he shared information on his translation process for the game, such as how many scenes in the game were roughly translated and that a lot of the dialogue was rewritten completely, which is sadly comparable to the shoddy translation work of the current era. The part of the interview in question, which was seemingly done through an online chat of some sort, going by the formatting, this is pretty lengthy. There's a lot to talk about here, so I'm not going to read all of it, but I do want to read quite a bit of it. Regardless, as you can see, this is kind of the general description of the situation. This is extremely worrying. I mean, this is a game that came out in 22 years ago. There was censorship going on. There were translators taking creative liberties, changing things around in games just because they felt like it was more appropriate. The interviewer asked, I played the game in Japanese too, and it's interesting what you guys changed, but it was the meaning that was more important than what's being translated sometimes after all. Although there were some interesting changes, like how Ramirez's obsession with Galcian was downtoned near the end. I mean, he's still obsessed, but he was saying their name like every other sentence in the Japanese version, and the localizer slash translator said, yeah, we basically sat down. I did a rough translation of the text and then threw away the Japanese text. We mapped out the big story beats in each scene and then just watched the cutscenes and ad-libbed what we imagined each character would say, and then rewrote a lot of the dialogue completely. This interviewer says nice. I don't think that this is nice at all whatsoever. This localizer is admitting to taking the original material, writing down the key points, and then throwing it out the window, and then just doing whatever they felt like. That is absolutely ridiculous. He even says, yeah, we thought it might be a little creepy for US audiences. Oh yes, characters being obsessed with another character, that's really creepy. I mean, come on, even 22 years ago, there were people changing around games and the dialogue because they thought, oh, it might be a little creepy to specific audiences. This isn't even taking creative liberties. This is completely rewriting a game and twisting the original writer's intentions because he admits that he took the basic outline and reframed it where he saw fit. This is why people don't trust localizers. They should be trying to translate things as close to the original material as possible in a way that makes sense, yet they're changing things they think are offensive or could be updated for modern audiences. And this situation isn't even new. This is from 22 years ago. It happened to a legendary JRPG, so imagine how many games in that time frame have been quietly altered that we've supported, instances we will never know about. It is absolutely crazy to have to sit here and talk about and even think about. Vorlik also talked about a co-writer who told him they should name things in the game after themselves. This isn't that surprising. I know quite a few games at this point have done that, where they'll name a weapon after someone, or they'll throw in Easter eggs. Like sometimes some of the lead writers or producers' children will have a drawing and they'll put it on a wall, so in the game it's supposed to be another kid who drew it, but it will actually be one of their kids who drew it. There's a lot of small things like that that are put into games, little Easter eggs at this point, so this isn't that surprising to hear. I'm just shocked to hear about the localization process and how they basically threw out all of the original Japanese text and did whatever they felt like with it. Vorlik even went on to admitting to changing characters' names to people that worked for the company and called it a bonus. Look, I'm sure this has happened before, but it definitely doesn't happen very often today, and it shouldn't, because even in bad dubs of video games and anime, in most cases they don't change the names of the characters from the original Japanese. Even if it was a more common practice 20 years ago, it shouldn't have been, just like it shouldn't be now, but he called it a bonus, which indicates it probably wasn't common. Unfortunately, I've talked about situations like this in the past. This was from Trails of Cold Steel 3's localization team admitting to censoring dialogue. This was back in 2020. The localization team behind The Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel 3 recently admitted on a live stream that they willingly altered dialogue they personally deem as sexist or culturally inappropriate, yet another instance of Western barbarians thinking they stand above all others and can police what should and shouldn't be allowed in fictional content. The topic was brought up during a live stream where two people on the team were asked how they redo jokes that don't work in English, and they basically just said, if we deem it as sexist or culturally inappropriate, we're going to change it. And here's another newer situation, just from March. It says Ghostwire Tokyo English translation predictably contains propaganda. Yes, when it was retranslated, they decided to change dialogue. It says, as it is becoming common of most every video game developer in the West, the recently launched Ghostwire Tokyo was found to have an English translation that randomly inserts propaganda as opposed to accurately translating the original Japanese, the line in question being, "All property is theft, kid." This article does show the one specific cutscene with all of the different translations. The Chinese translation says the world belongs to the people. The Japanese original says who knows really, and the Western translation says all property is theft, kids. So this unfortunately is a reoccurring theme. This isn't something new and shocking, but it's very disappointing. Usually hearing about localization teams changing things where they see fit isn't surprising to me because it does happen. It's disappointing, but it's not surprising. But hearing about it happening to a legendary game from 22 years ago is surprising, and again, it's very worrying, because imagine how many other games were quietly changed that we'll never know about. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to give it a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel. And of course, if you didn't, make sure to give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I will talk to you all again in the next video really soon.